which is good. Where we're continuing with this pre-intermediate, knowing that we're practicing together. Yep, page where we are going from 24. 24, superlatives. So we've been talking about nouns and comparing. If you remember, nouns, mean things. They tell us an object, and adjectives give us information about the nouns. And you remember, we have been comparing. We have been saying that, this noun is bigger than this one, or smaller, or taller, or longer. So we've been doing that in the past lessons. And if you remember, we looked at the comparatives where we add the ER and then the word more. That was the last lesson. Now, this lesson, we're doing the superlatives. And superlatives, instead of adding the ER to the adjective, now we're going to add the EST. So it's words like greatest, smallest, biggest, oldest. So we're still comparing, but we're not comparing two objects or two things. Now we're comparing one thing to many things. Okay, so that's the difference between the comparative adjective, the comparative adjective, because we're comparing two nouns, but the superlative adjective, we're comparing one thing to many. That's why it's like saying, this is the oldest building in the world. This is, she is the smartest girl in the class. He is the tallest man in the world. Okay, it's sentences like that, and it's called the superlative. So we're going to look at those rules, and then we're going to look at using some words, to and enough. So how do we use these words? To, T-O-O, and the word enough. So we'll look at those two words, and then we're going to look at participial adjectives. So that's adjectives that have an ED to them, like bored, or an ing, interesting, worried, frightened. So that will be later in the lesson, number 24. So that's what we'll do today. Let's get into the rules and practice together, starting with, as I said, the superlative. So we have here the superlatives. And again, it's the adjective. We're talking about the adjective to give information about the noun. Now, if it has one syllable, that just means one sound, like great, small, old. Like there's one sound when you say the word. So what you have to do is you have to add the EST to the adjective. So greatest, smallest, oldest. Okay, this is the superlative, different to the comparative in the last lesson. So if the adjectives have two syllables, so that means two sounds. So if you look at this word, careful, patient, clever, happy, pretty, narrow, there's two sounds. I need to use the word most. So for example, most careful, most patient. But if it's two syllable, but they end in an ER, Y, or OXV, then you add the EST. So cleverest, that means like the smartest, happiest, the prettiest, and the narrowest. Now, if the adjective has three syllables, that means three sounds, we use the word most. For example, expensive. You can hear that there's three sounds. Expensive, dangerous, comfortable. So I need to say the most expensive. For example, this is the most expensive gift I have ever received. Or this city is the most dangerous city in the world. Or the most comfortable. This is the most comfortable chair in all the classroom. Okay, so again, we're using our adjectives, and that's what we change. We change the adjectives but you look at the sound. Does it have one syllable? That means one sound. Does it have two syllables? Or does it have three syllables? And then you add the EST or you add most. Okay, so that's what you need to remember. The EST or the word most before the adjective. And as you can see, we don't, especially when it has three syllables, we don't change the adjective. It stays the same. So expensive is most expensive. Dangerous is most dangerous. Comfortable is most comfortable. So be careful in the three-syllable sound. You don't add anything to the adjective. You just put the word most in front of it. Okay, so that's the superlative rules. Let's talk about the irregulars. So as we had in the comparative, we had some irregulars. And the irregulars here are the words bad, which we say worst. Remember in the comparative, it was, this is the worst. But in the superlative, worst, with a T ending, not an E. Good, we say best. Remember in the comparative, it was better. Was it better? It was, in the comparative, it was, yes, better. But in the superlative, it's best. And little, we say least. So just remember these irregulars. This means that they break the rules. They don't have an EST or the word more. They have their own rules. And you just have to remember these words: bad, good, and little. So you say worst, best, or least. When we compare, when we're talking about one noun compared to many. So you could see superlatives are used to compare one thing with several other things. So one noun compared to many. Okay, not just comparing two nouns, but one noun to just many in general. They are used with the and in. Like this is the longest river in the world. They are used with the and of. So for example, this is the most expensive car of them all. Or they could be used just with the. This is the most expensive car here. Okay, so we could see we need to put the word the and maybe EST or the word most. And then you've got either in the world, of them all. So it's comparing in your whole class, in the whole of all the books, or if you're looking at many chairs, one chair compared to all the chairs. So you're comparing one to several others, to many, one to several. That's what we are comparing. Okay, it's called the superlative, and it has different rules to the comparative. This is the superlative with its rules. Okay, so now that we know the rules, let's practice some sentences. So I'll do the first one. This is the biggest building in the world. So you can see I'm looking at one building and I'm saying compared to all of the buildings in the world, this one is the biggest building in the world. Okay, we'll start with deeper for 3.
Yeah. Here.
Yeah, exactly. Good. This is the most comfortable chair here. Good. So we need to say the, and because comfortable has 3 sounds, comfortable, we just need to put the word most in front of it and then talk about the noun. So this is the noun here: chair, building. Okay. Number 3, we'll go to Jomund.
He bought the most expensive job.
Yes, he bought the most expensive flowers in the shop. Yep. So of all the flowers in the shop, he bought one and it was the most expensive flowers compared to many of the flowers in the shop. And 4, we'll go to Essie.
I think she is the best singer in the group.
Good, the best singer in the group. I think she's the best singer in the group. Yep. 5.
He is the most careful the company driver.
The most careful driver in the company.
Yeah.
Yes, so you always have to put the noun after the adjective. So we have the most careful, that's the adjective that we are now using to compare. And the noun is driver, and then we're saying in the company, because we're comparing, he is the most careful, like he's a good driver, compared to many, many of the drivers in the business, in the company, in the work. 6.
Who is the oldest student in the class?
Yes, so we say it the way it's written, who's the oldest student in the class? Good. So I could even ask a question with the superlative. So remember our questions, they could start with one of the W's, what, when, why, where, who, and I'm asking about a student, but I want to know of all the student, who's the oldest? Yep, so we add the EST to the adjective old. Who's the oldest student in the class, in your class? Or you could say, who's the oldest child in your family? Number 7.
It's the worst film I have ever seen.
It's the worst film
Mm.
I've ever seen. So it's the worst film I've ever seen. So remember, worst comes from the adjective bad, and we directly put the noun after it, film, and it's the worst film that I've ever seen. Compared to all the films that I have seen in my life, this is the worst one. 8. And just another reminder, remember when we looked at the articles in the previous lessons? So when we say a, it's because it's the first time that you're talking about a noun. But when you say the, it's because you're very specific. You know exactly which noun you're talking about. So because I said it's the worst film, you know exactly which movie I am talking about because maybe we've just watched it on TV together. So that's why it's the. So we never say a when we compare, we say the because we're being very specific. We know exactly which student, which film, which driver, which singer, which flower. So we're very specific. We know exactly which one. And 8.
The worst
Shiz.
film.
Yes, we did that one.
It is the
Worst
worst
film.
film.
Ever seen.
I ever seen.
Yes, this one we did, but you're 8. Shiz. Is the most intelligent of she's the most intelligent of all the students. So you could see I'm talking about the subject, which is she. So maybe I'm talking about my friend or Maria, whichever person. So I'm saying that she is the most intelligent. Intelligent means the smartest. She's clever, she's smart, she's wise. So she's the most intelligent of all the students. So you could see I'm comparing one person to many, many, many students in the class. Number 9.
It was the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. 10.
He is the most helpful of all the assistants.
Yeah, his. So that comes from he is, but we say it the way it's written. His, the most helpful of all the assistants, of all the workers. 11.
He is the young.
Is
In the class.
of the in his class. He's the youngest in his class. Yep. In his class. Yep. So he's the youngest in his class. 12.
It is the poorest country in the world.
Yes, this is the poorest country in the world. We know because we've got that adjective poor. It just has one sound. So we need to add the EST to it. This is the poorest country in the whole world. So of all the countries, this one is the poorest. 13.
She is the most strange person I have ever met.
Strangest.
Strangest.
She's the most strangest person. Oh, sorry, she's the strangest person I've ever met. So strange, stranger. Has two sounds, but it's in the rule where we just add the EST. So it's not yet a 3 sound, so we don't add the most. So it's just, she's the strangest person I've ever met in my whole life. 14.
Did he answer difficult with
The most difficult? I didn't answer the most difficult questions because we know difficult has 3 sounds. Difficult. So you need to add most. 15, the last one.
Peter's the oldest of them all.
Yes, Peter's the oldest of them all. So maybe I'm talking about Peter compared to all his football friends or to all his friends. I don't know, but you can see I'm definitely comparing one person, one noun to many of them all. Okay, so that's all that we had for the superlatives. Again, really quickly remembering that you have to know if the adjective has 1 sound, 2 sounds, or 3 sounds. Usually you add the EST, but if it has 2 sounds, you could add most, 3 sounds, you add most. And then remember just to be careful with the irregular. That means that they break the rules. These words you have to remember when you compare. And just remember, you need to say after the noun. So you can see I've got the noun here, river, car. After the noun, you have to say a phrase like in the world, in the whole class, of them all, compared to many. That's what you have to add that phrase at the end once you've changed your adjective into the superlative, because we're comparing one thing to many, many, many things. So you need a phrase at the end, of the world, in the whole world, compared to many countries, in the whole, compared to all the books or compared to all the flowers or whatever. Okay, so that was superlatives. Now we're going to, yes, for these ones. So we did the practice with some questions. Let's have a look at now using these words, to and enough. So you can see to has T-double-O. And then we've got this word enough. So let's talk about these words. So the infinite with to is often used after to. Then we have an adjective, or not adjective enough. So let's have a look at some examples. If you see here, it's too cold. So this is our adjective, cold. We know it's cold. To swim today. So we're only talking about one day, one object, one noun, because we're saying it's. That means like today, or the temperature, or the swimming pool. It's too cold. Now, too, you can also remember this is different than the word to, which you find after a verb, like to swim, to ride, to speak, to work. That's usually when we say, I went to my grandmother's house to eat some cake, or I went to see I went to the movies to watch the latest film. So this is a different TOO, because this TO is with a verb, but this TOO is with an adjective. So that's how you can remember this one is used with adjectives. But this TO is used with verbs. So this one is to verb. So that's how you remember if you need to have a TOO or a TO. Now with the TOO, remember it's also another word for saying so much, you know, like it's so much cold, but we don't really say that phrase. So think of this TOO as meaning like too much, like so much or very much. So it's too cold to swim today. It isn't, so this is a negative sentence, it isn't warm enough to go to the beach. So we've got our adjective here, warm. We don't change the adjectives because you can just see cold, warm, hot, old, big. You just say the adjective. You don't put ER or you don't put EST. This is not the comparative. This is not the superlative. So you just say it isn't warm enough to go to the beach. Let's practice. So once you get practice, you'll know. Just remember that with the negative, not is when you will say enough. So you could see the negative, adjective, enough, or just to, adjective. So you only have two rules to remember. The first one, TOO, adjective, or negative, not, adjective, enough. Okay, so let's practice with some sentences. I'll do the first two. I can't walk any further. I'm too tired. So we could see this adjective here, tired. I know it has an ED and you think, is it a verb? It's an adjective verb. So it's still, I'm too tired. Like I'm very tired. Even imagine that this word means very. If you can see that it's similar to saying I'm very tired, but not with one T, because remember one O, is with a verb. And this is not the rule that we are talking about. We are talking about the TOO with an adjective. So remember, this is an adjective. These are all adjectives, not action words, verbs. Number two, I'm sorry, you're not, so I can see the negative, you're not old, that's my adjective, enough to see this film. Okay, let's practice deeper. Number three.
Let's go to the library.
Yeah, it's too noisy to work here. That means there's too much sound. It's very loud, too much like noise. So it's too noisy to work here. Again, you can see that it's the same as saying it's very noisy. It's the same way as saying very. It's very noisy to work here. Let's go to the library. because in the library, it's more quieter. Number 4.
He
Yes. So Ian was not, or you could connect that and say Ian wasn't fast enough. Okay, he didn't have, enough. Enough means like a lot of. So he was a slow runner. There was other students or people that were more fast than him. So Ian wasn't, you can see the negative. You can put this word together, remember, and say wasn't if you want. So this could be wasn't. Ian wasn't fast enough to get into the swimming team. 5.
Your handwriting is too small to read.
Yeah, your handwriting is too small to read, is very small to read. So this is a good example because you could see TOO and an adjective, and then here you can see TO and a verb. So remember, this is how you know if you need to put a TOO or a TO. The TOO always goes before the adjective, and the TO always is connected to a verb, an action word, to read, to study, to play, to dance. And remember, this TOO is like another way of saying very. Your handwriting is very small to read. Like I can't see it. It's too small. Number 6.
Afraid we can't buy that computer. It's too expensive.
Yeah, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, we can't buy that computer. It's too expensive. 7.
I don't think Josh should get the new job. He's not efficient enough.
Yes, you've had the negatives, all the negatives. Yes, he's not efficient enough. Okay, he's not fast and quick and, good at the job. He's not efficient enough compared to many other people. So remember, we are still comparing, but we don't want to say compared or of them all. This is just another way to compare. So it's he's not. Remember the negative? We put the not first, and then the adjective efficient means like fast, quick. Yeah, he's not efficient enough. Number 8.
Those jeans are too dirty to wear to the party.
Yeah, those jeans are too dirty, are very dirty to wear to the party. Again, make sure that you could see TOO is with an adjective, and you can see the verb here, TO with a verb, an action word. Number 9.
We couldn't talk to each other in the pub. The music was too loud.
Yeah, the music was too loud. Good. 10, the last one.
And this bottle are not strong enough to open it.
Yes, you've had all the negatives. That is good. You've practiced the negatives. So yes, can you help me with this bottle? I'm not strong enough to open it. Compared to many other people, maybe someone else is stronger. I'm not strong compared to someone else. Okay, so this was just another way to compare. Again, it's using the words like TOO and enough. It's just another way to compare using our adjectives. Okay, I wanted to talk about now the participle adjective. So what does that mean? Participle adjectives. If you look at these two sentences, I was bored and the lesson was boring. So it's not possible to say the lesson was bored. It is possible to say she was boring. So the lesson was boring. So you could see we've got a subject. So here I'm talking about the lesson, maybe your English lesson or your whatever course you are doing. And you're saying it was, we know that this is in the past. We did this before, the past simple was, and then you can see boring. There's an ing. This is still an adjective. She was boring. So boring means like, not fun, not interesting. It's the opposite word to fun and interesting. So how do we do these sentences? We start with a subject. Okay, and then you use was or were, depending on if you're talking about a singular or a plural subject. And then you've got an adjective, and these adjectives usually have the ing. Okay, different to, that's the rule here. Just put it here. So different to the adjectives we looked at before, because these adjectives have an ing ending. They're not words like old, young, beautiful, pretty. We're not adding an er. We're not adding an est. These adjectives already have the ing, like boring. So let's practice. Again, these are called participial adjectives. They're just different types of adjectives compared to the ones we looked at before. So I'll do the first two. It was a very interesting performance. Okay, so it, maybe I'm talking about a show, because I could see here I said performance. So yeah, it was a very interesting. Interesting means it was fun, it was enjoyable. We were all very interested in what he said. Now, this one's a little bit different. It did go with the ed. And this one had the ing. So you could see here we have we were. So we is our subject, plural. So we need were from the verb to be. So we're here, this one, were. We were all very interested in what he said. This is more like a verb, I would say. Number 3. Are you going to pick tired or tiring?
Tiring.
It was a very tiring journey. So the reason why it is tiring is because I said it. So when I'm talking about the subject being it, remember it is like an unalive object. We say it. It was a very tiring journey. Because tired is more like saying I was tired. We were tired. So when I have a subject I or we, then I can say were or was, depending on the subject. And then I could say tired. So we can still use this way, but it's with a different subject. So you can see the ed is more like it's as an action here to a subject of I or we. So number 4.
Worried.
Yes, we were all very worried. Yeah, we were worried, like, yeah, 5.
The children are frightened by the animals.
Yeah, the children are frightened. Did you say frightened?
ing.
No, ed. Because the children is plural. It's like saying they. So the children are frightened by the animal. You can only, so it's ed. It goes back to this rule, which is different. So I'll put the rules here. This is the first rule. So I'll put number 1. The second one, so maybe I'll put that this one is if you use it specifically. Okay, so if you say it, then you have to put the ing to the adjective. But
Singular
yes,
ing.
yes, but not because not just singular, because I, we, or
Yeah.
they as the subject has
Plural.
has the ed. So I will just put adjective. It's more like a ed. So if you can see, that's the two rules. So the first one is if you say specifically it, then you would put an ing, like it was boring, it was raining today, it was exhausting. How was your day? Oh, it was exhausting. Yeah, how was the film? It was interesting. So anytime when you mention the object being it, remember it means the film, the book, the movie, the dinner. You say it was ing. Or it could be sorry, then I'm going to take off were here. But we have she. So we have to go it, she, and he with an ing because she was boring. But if we have I, we, or they, then you say with an ed, I was tired, we were exhausted after work, they were devastated, they were saddened. So you could see it depends on the subject. That's how you know if you need to use an ed or an ing. The ing is with the subject, it, she, or he. The ed is with the subject, I, we, or they. Now the children is they, it's plural. Remember we looked at our nouns and children is an irregular. It comes, the singular noun is child, the plural noun is children, and we can see it's plural, so we need to put the ed. So the children are frightened by the animals. Okay, I think we have some more. Yes, number 6, more practice. Why do you look
Why?
so?
Two.
Yes. So let's go back to one of our rules. It looks like you is also in this ed. So you, so I, you, we, they. So really, as I said, he, she, it is when you say with the ing, he, she, it only. Okay, so I'll rewrite these rules here so we can see them again. It's when I say it, she, and he, then we have was, and then the adjective with the ing. But the second rule is if we have we, they, you, is that it? We, I, if you have I, then you have was or were plus the adjective with the ed. Okay, so that's our 2 rules that we learned. So all you got to remember, it, he, she has the ing. It was boring. She was very, she was boring. He was, whatever he was. But then I, you, we, they is when we start to say the ed. I was exhausted. You were worried. We were devastated. They were ashamed. So why do you look so bored at school? Number 7.
It was a terrible, exciting day.
It was a terribly exciting day. Now, terribly sounds like a bad word because terrible means like bad. But here we're using that word to say like it was a really, really good day because it was a terribly exciting day. So we're using this word in a negative way, but it's not very common. So try not, you don't hear a lot of native speakers say it. So I would just say it was an exciting day. How was your day? It was exciting. It was good. It was fun. It was interesting. So you could see because of it, anytime you want to say an adjective, exciting, interesting, amazing, then yeah. But it's not common to say terribly, but I just don't want you to be confused because terrible means a bad, like, how was your day? It was terrible. It was bad. It was horrible. So, and as a native speaker, we can take a negative word and actually put it with in a positive way, but it's not a common, maybe it's a bit more British speaking. So it's not a common Australian way to say it. Number 8.
Don't look so worried.
Yes, don't look so worried. Now we can't see a subject, but when you say don't, it means you're talking to someone, you're giving them an order. Do not. So we're talking about you. Don't look so worried. So we've got the ED. Number 9.
We had
Yes, we had a tiring trip home. Now the thing is, yes, it goes here. We had a tiring trip home. It is tiring, but then that means we can go here as well. Because you're using the verb to have. So if you look here, this is the verb, hi, Sarah. This is the verb, I'll go this color. This is the verb to be. Okay, so when we use the verb to be, these rules are still correct. But if you look here, this is the verb to have. So now we have a subject. I had a tiring trip. You had a tiring trip. Actually, it's all the subjects. So I'm not going to write them. It's all the subject. You got to remember your subjects. We did this in the beginning of the lesson. Subject is I, you, he, she, it, we, they. So all subjects plus to have. So maybe it's have, or in the past, had, and then the adjective will be in the ing. It's a little bit of like an opposite rule here. So I have, we don't say I have though, interesting. I have an interesting, oh yeah, I have some interesting news to tell you. I have an interesting book. I have an interesting film that we can watch. Yeah, we had, in the past, we had an interesting trip. We had an interesting dinner. Yep. So the difference was because we were using the verb to have. And that meant we needed to actually use the ing with all subjects. So you've got 3 rules now that you've learned.
Which one is the correct?
Well, they're both. It just depends if you're using to be or if you're using to have.
Both correct.
Both are correct. Yep. Because, you said here we had a tiring trip. So because it's got the verb to have, but if I wanted to say was, I could say it was a tiring trip. So really, you could make the sentence work in both ways, but look at the verb. Do you want to use to be or do you want to use to have? Because here it works. It was a tiring trip is the same as saying we had a tiring trip. I just changed the subject and I changed which verb because I wanted to say here it, like to talk about the trip specifically, but here to talk about we had a tiring trip. But they both would mean the same thing. The trip, you were tired on the trip. Okay, so just look at that verb. To be, remember, is was or were. And to have is have or had in the past. Okay, number 10.
It was an extremely
Amusing
amusing
program. It was an extremely amusing program. That's using the first rule. So amusing, it's kind of like interesting, you know, like it's, yeah, it was interesting. It was an extremely interesting program. Amusing, it's just another word. Number 11.
Was an exciting idea.
Yes, it was an exciting idea. Good. You can see that it was. As soon as you say it was, you should always say an ing. It was interesting. It was exciting. It was boring. It was whatever. 12.
It was the most boring lesson I can remember.
Yes, it was the most boring lesson I can remember. 13.
We were all
Yes, we were all feeling tired. Yep, we know it's from the first rule, the plural, we were, ed. Sarah, do you want to have a go? I know you just came. You might have missed the rules, but these are the 3 rules that we learnt. So just have a look. Is the verb, this is probably pretty hard because this is a question now, but have a try. Didn't you think it was amusing? Perfect. Yep. Didn't you think it was an amusing play? Yep. So make sure you write down these 3 rules. Good. Number 15. Back to Deepa.
The last hour, half hour was a worry time.
Yeah, it was a worrying. The last half hour, because that's saying it. It comes from this first rule. It was the last half hour, it was a worrying time. So not good. It was just very bad worrying. 16.
I have never been so frightened in my life.
Yes, I've never been so frightened. That comes from verb to have. So we're looking at here. I have, never. We're just using a negative here. I've never been so frightened. So it looks like the 4th rule we can add is if you say the subject, so I, then the have been, and then it's actually with an ed, the adjective. So it's like saying, I have been, it's a bad example, but you know, I have been abused, or I have been scared. I have been worried about you. I have been devastated. I have been saddened by the news. So if you want to say the have or had with an adjective, it needs to be in the ing. But if you said have been, then it's just with an ed adjective. Okay, so you had 4 rules to remember. That was probably the hardest part, I think, of what we did today. So again, I'll just recap it really quickly for Sarah because she just came in. These were called the participial adjectives. So if you remember in the last lessons, we did the comparative adjective where we added the er or the word more. And then today we did the superlative adjective where we added the est to the adjective or the word most. And now we're just looking at some words. They are adjective, but you could see they're not words like old, young, pretty, tall, big. These are words that have either an ed or an ing, but they are adjectives. They're used in the same way. You would think that they're verbs, but they're adjective verbs, participial adjectives. And how do we use them? These were the 4 rules. Depending if you're using the verb to be, was or were, but if you're saying it, you will always say it was boring. It was interesting. How was the film? It was good. It was interesting. How was the class? It was interesting. But if you're saying I, you, we, they as a subject, then you need to say ed. But if you're using the verb to have, then you need to say the ing But if you said have been, then you need the ed. Just don't worry, try to look back at this last part of the lesson, especially with these examples, and you'll just start to see that it must be one of these 4 rules. Okay, just before we get into the next lesson, let's have a quick break for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back doing adverb of manner. So this is good. Adverb of manner, we'll come back about 5 minutes. Okay. And I'm just gonna and I'll open back up in about 5 minutes. Okay, so see you, come back 5 minutes.